Hello, hello. Let's move that a little bit. All right. Hey, Kitty Cat Peterson, how are you today? You guys can't see her, but she's over there. So, my day, hi there. Now she's here. There, this is her tail. That's really all you can see. The people want to see you. Who's a kitty cat, huh? Anyways, my day. So I literally just got back from the DMV about 15 minutes ago. I spent 2 hours there. And when it was all done, or when it was my turn to go up there, they said, yeah, you don't have the right paperwork, so get fucked, nerd. I was like, of course. So I called the number that I need to call to get this issue resolved. And they said, your place in line is 86. I was like, 86, huh? So I gave them my number to call me back. So if my phone rings, I might have to take that because holy shit. Anyways, that has nothing to do with what we're doing. I'm just giving you a fair warning for the 12 people that heard that. She is a very sweet kitty cat. She's maybe the sweetest kitty cat. Are you the kittiest of cats? Are you? Why do you look so angry? Huh? All I ever do is love you. Anyways, Pooperson. All right, chat, get this person banned. Anyways, I wanted to take a look at. I was watching this video, and I thought it was really interesting. I just thought the shit that they were talking about with like, with relation to like theory of mind and identity was really interesting. It's actually it's not really a debate. It's each person just kind of giving their case. And like they debate terms a little bit but for the most part they just kind of give each of their cases. I haven't watched the entire thing because it goes on for a while. And what I noticed is about 90 minutes into it, I realized that it was kind of funny because what I realized was, hey, wait a minute. For the past hour, neither side has discussed at all whether or not abortion is wrong. They're just debating whether or not a fetus is a person. And so like what it means to be a thinking, rational individual. So I kind of checked out after that point, but maybe I'll skip ahead and we'll watch some of this. I don't know how long we'll do this for. But man, I should really. I cannot get into frame. I guess I can tilt my monitor. There we go. Get me in frame a little bit better. Three dudes talking about abortion. Well, four. Well, actually, I always forget his name. But the channel's Majesty of Reason. He's very, very smart. He doesn't really do much talking at all. So I guess it will be three dudes because it'll be me. I'll get this rolling here pretty quick. We'll listen to Trent's opening, and I'll probably pause a lot during Trent's opening to just sort of give my take on it. But generally, and this other person, Dr. Dustin Crummett, that sounds like a character from like from a British fictional show, Dustin Crummett. But anyways, he doesn't at any point give the basic argument I make, which I think is kind of in a way the only one you really need, which is I don't know if it's called the bodily rights argument or exactly. Why can't I make this? That's weird. Anyways, but my take is nobody has the right to use another person's body. That's generally, I think some people consider that what's called an evictionist view, perhaps. However, I feel like to be a strict evictionist, you'd have to say, well, no, if somebody's like, if it's the day of their delivery, but they just say, I changed my mind, I'd rather just have an abortion, and this thing doesn't have the right to use my body right now. I don't think that's right. I don't think you should get an abortion the day before your due date, just because you don't want it. I think a natural, or well, it doesn't have to be a natural birth. It can be a C-section or whatever. I think that child should be allowed to exist, and so at that point, I think there should be like some sort of social or whatever. I don't want to call this safety net. That seems weird, but like we have adoptions and things like that in place. But anyways, this isn't really something I go over, but I thought this was like philosophically really interesting to talk about. So that's why we're going to do it, even though I'm not a philosophy bro. Anyways.
So my first argument, it's a simple one. You call it the humanity argument. It's wrong to intentionally kill innocent biological human beings. A fetus is an innocent biological human being. Abortion intentionally kills a fetus. Therefore, abortion is wrong.
Okay, so we got to stop already right there. Anyways, here's why I think this is wrong. I think it's wrong because I think it basically hinges on this fact that I don't think anybody has, well, I guess it's an opinion, but I've never heard anybody disagree with this, that nobody has the right to use another person's body. So, abortion does intentionally end a life, and I don't go around saying that it's not a human life. I think you're a human when you're a zygote. That doesn't mean the same thing as you have legal personhood. But even if you had legal personhood, that's not the same thing as you have the right to use another person's body. There's also a self-defense. I probably should have written this down, but I didn't. There's like a ton of things with respect to this. Yeah. Well, not a ton, but there are a number of things with respect to this. And now Kitty Cat got up because I moved. There are a ton of things with respect to this, kind of angles you have to approach it at. From. So I think self-defense is a necessary one. So I'm going to write that down just so I don't forget it. And I'm just going to put it here in front of me. So anyways, let's imagine. So it's always wrong to intentionally kill a human being. I just don't think that is correct. And here's an example I can give you. The simplest thing I can think of is, imagine you are going rock climbing and you are tethered to somebody else. Now, some sort of accident that is nobody's fault happens, and the person below you who is tethered to you slips, and that causes you to be detached from whatever those things are called. I think they're called like crampers, not carabiners. Those are the clips, but the things that like expand into the rock, they're called crampers or something like that. But let's say that they fall and they cause you to fall. Now, for whatever, this is my hypothetical, so I get to invent the scenario. But for whatever reason, we basically know that the weight of both of you, the equipment cannot hold that, and you're both inevitably going to die unless you cut the rope below you. Now, what you are doing there, and this is kind of a self-defense thing, and I think with respect to pregnancy, there is an angle of self-defense that you can look at. But for right now, I'm just tackling the prospect of it's always wrong to intentionally kill another human being. I genuinely don't think anybody can really make the argument that it would be morally wrong for you to save your life by cutting that other person off. But you would intentionally be taking another life. I think and again, maybe there's some like philosophical mumbo jumbo terminology for this. If there is, I don't know what it is. But I wouldn't exactly say that now, but sorry. Do I think it would be wrong for you to choose not to cut the rope and then for your imminent demise to take place? No, I don't think it would be wrong to do that. And so in that respect, I don't exactly like, maybe it's not necessarily the case that it would be good, like morally good for you to save your own life this way. I think that it is morally permissible. That's what I would say. Again, as somebody that doesn't know the lingo or the mumbo or even the jumbo, that's just what I would say. So I think that that's a fairly reasonable case that anybody could probably be sold on, that there is justification for taking an innocent human life. And then with respect to abortion, because I don't think anybody has the right to use another person's body, um, especially before there's any sense of like sentience or ability to suffer within the organism, which is generally 21 or 22 weeks or so. I really don't have a problem with it for any reason. Now, I'm not like, I don't know. I don't know what you would call this. I'm not like a hardcore person. Like, I think if somebody legitimately said that I'm going to intentionally have sex with the intention of getting pregnant, with the intention of having an abortion, I think that that is wrong. But nobody does that, at least not that I'm aware of. Because the only retort to this that I typically hear people say is that if you have sex, you consent to getting pregnant. But I think that that's absolutely stupid, because you don't know, like, you can't choose to get pregnant. And I think the logic of this would make it permissible for an auto insurance company to be like, wait, your spouse got killed by a drunk driver? Wait, what was your spouse doing driving? Everybody knows that driving carries with it some inherent risk. In fact, driving is more dangerous than flying. Your spouse should have been on a plane, not driving. So we're going to deny you coverage because you took the risk. You knew what the risks were. I think that that's just really kind of stupid. Oh man, I don't think I can get bogged down in having a meta debate with the chat. So you guys just debate amongst yourselves. If you send a super chat, then I have to read it. But I don't want to get too distracted. And this video that I'm reacting to is already pretty long, so we'll see. So anyways, without going on too many tangents, that's just my case that I don't think is unreasonable. That that taking an innocent human life is not always morally wrong.
Now, this.
Oh, I will respond to this though. A fetus can't choose to use another person's body either. Correct. You can't choose. I don't know if you've ever heard of the what's it called? It gets brought up here. It's the very famous argument. I think her last name was Thompson or Thomas or something like that. I don't know if it's called the bodily rights argument or what it's called. But the hypothetical is the world's greatest violinist has some sort of rare disease, and it can only be cured if you like tether yourself so that you can share their blood or whatever. It's an interesting example, but let's say that I have an extraordinarily rare kidney disease and an extraordinarily rare blood type. And let's just say my identical twin is the only person that can save my life. Well, I didn't choose to have this rare disease, but that doesn't mean that I have the right. It doesn't mean that it would be murder for my twin to not offer their life or take the risk of losing their life in order to support my life, which actually is what pregnancy entails. And that's sort of the self-defense part of it. Maybe I guess I do have no choice but to get into it now. This is the only issue where I can think of where people are forced to choose to be unhealthy, something like that. I'm not exactly sure. Pregnancy inherently carries with it risks. And so including the risk of death. And so the idea that people should be forced to have to engage in something that carries with it an unnecessary risk of death really makes zero sense to me as well. From what I understand, that's what the abortion is healthcare argument mostly hinges upon as well. But anyways,
Scientific evidence
I've only played like 10 seconds of the video, so we'll move on here.
for this is very clear. Those who are well informed in the debate for and against admit, as David Boudin does in his book, A Defense of Abortion, that the unborn human embryos and fetuses are just individual members of the human species. So that's not really in dispute. Now, you might object that there's something wrong with the premise that it's wrong to intentionally kill innocent biological human beings, because it doesn't account for the wrongness of killing non-human intelligent beings, like let's say aliens, if they happen to exist. But that would only prove there may be other reasons that it's wrong to kill human beings, like that it's wrong to kill rational creatures. I'll return to that point later. The existence of other beings it would be wrong to directly kill would not refute the claim that it is wrong to kill innocent biological human beings. And so if you believe that truth, just if you simply find that to be an obvious moral truth, it's wrong to directly kill innocent human beings, then you would be obligated to oppose abortion. Now, another objection of
I have something to say about what he just said there, but I think he unpacks it a little bit more later.
You might make is to say, well, we do intentionally kill innocent human beings when we, for example, take a permanently comatose person off life support, for example. But in these cases, I would say when they're done ethically, we do not actually intend death. For example, if we took someone off a ventilator and they started breathing on their own, which does happen sometimes, we wouldn't proceed to smother them to death because we only intended to end extraordinary measures to keep them alive, not their actual death. So I think a person is perfectly rational to believe that it's always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent biological human being. And since the unborn are innocent biological human beings, it follows that it's wrong to kill them. All right, here's the second argument. This would be the personhood argument. So this would be an inference to the best explanation based on the concept of personhood. So Dustin and I both agree there's a special class of beings called persons that have a right to life. We also agree that we are persons, the three of us, and anyone else watching and understanding this debate is a person.
You know, this debate made me start thinking about this in ways I probably never have before. And I don't know 100% how to, like, what my exact position on this is, but you know, when you talk about your identity, what was his name? Dustin makes this very compelling argument. Well, he brings it up, this thing called the thinking parts argument. So brains have thoughts, but we also, like, when we talk about having a thought, we say I, Eric, have a thought. So if brains can have thoughts but Eric has thoughts, then are there two thinking things sitting in this chair? No, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. I think that there's one thinking thing, which would mean that minds are brains, that they're basically the same thing. Now, I brought that up. I bring that up because I thought about, and hopefully I'll remember how to like tie this into all this stuff later on. But I thought about, so what is a person or a human or whatever? Well, I guess I would say, yeah. What is a person? To me, I guess a person is a mind plus a body, because I can consider, you know, your body like that to be like you as an organism, which is different from you, the individual. And so a person is not a mind, it's not a body, it's a mind and a body. And maybe there are other people that share that view, or there are people that can tell me why that view doesn't make any sense. But I don't know. To me, that's kind of where I ended up with it.
But many other humans who don't understand this debate are persons, including mentally disabled adults or newborn infants. But we also agree there are many beings that are not persons, or I should say many people watching this debate at least will agree there are many other beings that are not persons in the sense you and I are persons. For example, most people would agree rats and pigeons are not persons, even if they possess intelligence to navigate mazes or deliver letters, for example, in the case of homing pigeons. So any definition of personhood must account for clear examples of personhood, like you, me, Dustin, Joe, infants, disabled humans. But it also can't include clear examples of non-persons who don't have a right to life, like rats or pigeons. So we can't merely say a person is any being that can feel pain or is aware of the outside world. That would include the rats and the pigeons. We can't also say a person is just any being who is immediately capable of rational thought. That would exclude infants and the disabled. If we say a person is any being that can feel pain, is any human, if we say a person is any human being that can feel pain, well, then we're being really arbitrary. If we don't think pain makes a rat a person, why would it make a human a person, the ability to feel it? A better definition of a person would be an individual member of a rational kind.
So that's actually fascinating. And I think it's a good description, actually, on Trent's part. So he's saying a human being is part of a rational kind. Like, hilariously, that's a phylogenetic or like a cladistic argument for what a human being is. You are part of the branch that is the Homo sapiens. I find that to be, I actually kind of like that, because it avoids the arbitrariness of what if they're like in a vegetative state in a coma that they'll never wake up from, or just a zygote. The problem I have with this never gets brought up, but Trent's position is that there is no moral problem with killing an organism that can suffer, if it's not a member of a rational kind. So there's nothing wrong with. He uses a specific example later on of fumigating a house to kill all the rats and cockroaches in it. He doesn't bring up insects, but I'll add that in there. There's nothing wrong with that, but there would be something wrong with doing it if there are people in that house, even if they're like squatters and they're, you know, like violating your property or rights or whatever. Now, funny enough, I think it's, even if rats can think and feel pain, I think you're within your right, because literally you do that because it's unhealthy. And so it goes back to self-defense once again. But the problem I have with this is it sounds objective, but I think it's also completely arbitrary, because I would ask Trent, is it morally wrong for a Neanderthal to get an abortion? Or what? They don't exist anymore, but would it be morally wrong? Now, I have no idea what Trent's answer to that question would be. Let's just say that the answer is no. It would not be morally wrong for a Neanderthal to get an abortion. What about a Neanderthal Homo sapiens hybrid? Now, all of a sudden, we're going to be in this he's going to have to exist in this very weird, very weird ground, where, because it's 50% Homo sapiens, then yes. And it's like, okay, what if a human Neanderthal hybrid who's only 50% human has a hybrid with a Neanderthal, and then that offspring, that fetus is only 25% human? Then is it? Well, so where's this cutoff going to be? It's not going to really exist anywhere. Because we have human Neanderthal hybrids today. People like me have between 3 to 6% Neanderthal DNA in us. Now, let's just say he does think it would be wrong for Neanderthals to get abortions. Okay, what about Homo erectus? What about Homo habilis? You could just, what about Australopithecus? You could just go back, and ultimately Trent's just going to say there's really, and he does believe, he's a Christian, but he does believe in evolution. I don't know what his views on the history of the human species are. Some Catholics think that Adam and Eve weren't the first humans, but they were just the first humans God spoke to, whatever. But he's not going to be able to tell you when an organism ceases to be part of a sufficiently rational kind. It's not going to be able to happen. You going to cross species to justify abortion? I mean, you're not even attempting to answer the question, so that's how I know it's a good question.
So under this view, me, Dustin, Joe, infants, disabled humans, they would all be persons, because our personhood does not depend on our current functional abilities or what we can do, but our innate capacity for certain functional abilities. Or
also, I mean, obviously I'm pro-choice, right? And what I really despise and can't stand, politically, strategically, about the way this conversation goes is the way people say that fetuses aren't human beings. That's just completely idiotic, because it's idiotic for so many reasons. Because if you're going to say they're not developed fully enough to be a human being yet, then what about what? Then, as you go through dementia, do you become less human? Nobody wants to say that, right? Or, you're a fetus until you're born. So if you're born prematurely via a C-section, you all of a sudden are a human, but a fetus that stays in the womb, and is in the womb, that is older than you are, but is still in the womb, isn't yet a human being. It's just it's very stupid, and it's a total political and debate loser. So the key here, and this is something that nobody can stand, is to find common ground. Everybody pretends that these whole things are about trying to demonstrate that the other person is wrong in every respect, whereas you have a much more better chance of winning, at least winning minds, if you try to find common ground.
What we are. This definition also excludes non-human animals like the rats and the pigeons because they're not members of a rational kind. And the definition is also species neutral. So if you didn't like my first argument, this one would include rational aliens if we discovered that they existed. This definition satisfies the inference to the best explanation. It perfectly accounts for views of personhood pro-life and pro-choicers agree about in the uncontroversial cases like newborns or rats. It isn't ad hoc. It's not arbitrarily designed to include unborn children. The inclusion of the unborn naturally follows from the definition itself. And no definitions of personhood just as easily account for the uncontroversial examples that I mentioned. And if unborn humans are persons, it follows that abortion is wrong because abortion directly kills innocent persons. All right, my third argument will be one based on personal identity. Okay, so it will go something like this. If an organism that once existed has never died, then this organism still exists. Well, I'm an organism. So I'm an organism that once existed in my mother's womb and never died. But it's always, on the face of it, wrong to kill me. Since I existed in my mother's womb, it was wrong on the face of it to kill me at that time. And what's true about killing me is also true about everybody else, that it would be wrong to kill anybody else on the face of it in their mother's womb.
Yeah, I don't really get that argument. I mean, the only way that argument works is if you believe that at every point in your life you have everybody has full legal personhood to the same extent. So I don't really know. That argument just seems kind of silly. You have to sell somebody on a completely different point in order for that to even work. There's also they bring up this concept of what the hell do they call it? Something like us, or minds like, or no, now I remember. Sorry, futures like ours. It's wrong to it's wrong to, and this is I watched a video from this YouTube philosophy channel that I've been binging lately. The original person to make the argument, I cannot remember what the hell his name was, but he says it's wrong because it deprives a future like ours. But that's just so ridiculous for so many reasons, because it makes abstinence evil. There's no reason abstinence wouldn't be evil, because you're deliberately preventing a future like ours from coming into being. If we know that a woman will ovulate an egg every month, and every time you choose not to do it, it would be evil. But also, it just really seems ridiculous to, like, if something doesn't happen, then there's nothing being taken away. And to call that a moral crime just doesn't make any sense, at least to me.
And so that would mean abortion is morally impermissible. Now, let me talk about the more controversial premises of this argument. Dustin might deny that you and I are organisms. He might say, we're simply mind.
Like I said, I'm not going to try to pay too much attention to the chat so I don't get distracted. So Alejandro, I mean, what you're saying sounds reasonable, except it allows you to say things like somebody on life support isn't alive. So I don't think that you'll always be able to be logically trapped by those types of things. So I don't think that that's really a winning perspective necessarily. With regard to the conversation,
that
it makes logical sense, kind of, but I just don't think it's a winning position.
Exist in organisms. I mean, that leads to a lot of implausible conclusions. If I'm a collection of thoughts in a mind, well, then I don't think. A thought can't think any more than a musical note can sing. Notes are what singers sing, and thoughts are what thinkers think. So what are thinkers? Well, I bet you're a thinker. In fact, if you're trying to understand me, then there is a thinking human organism sitting in front of a screen right now. But it doesn't make sense to say there is a mind thinking about me in front of a screen, and a completely different animal thinking about me in front of the screen, it makes more sense to say you were the thinking animal. Also, if I'm a collection of thoughts.
Yeah, there's this weird philosophical argument called no thinking animals, which is it's going to get brought up later, but it's like the thinking parts argument where, you don't say that. We say animals have thoughts, but I have thoughts. So there can't be two things having thoughts. So therefore I can't be a human animal or something like that.
Where am I when no thoughts are occurring? When I'm asleep in a deep coma or something like that? Do I stop existing? If I exist because I'll presumably wake up tomorrow, what if we're not sure when I'll wake up or ever from some kind of an accident? This leads to many perplexing views about me being just a mind. But if I am a living organism, then as long as that organism exists, I exist. And this was true from the moment I first existed after fertilization. And the other controversial premise would be it's always on the face.
Okay. So no, because they still have a heart, the person on life support, and they've been alive before that. Unborn babies were never alive. I can't agree with any of that because a zygote is obviously alive. I don't know what you mean, but there are things that, like, trees don't have hearts, but they are alive. Now, you just arbitrarily said heart, I think. I don't think heart is what determines whether or not something is alive. But anything that you're going to point to that a zygote or an embryo or a fetus is lacking, we will be able to find things in the world that lack those things and even you think are alive. So that's just why I don't think it's a winning position.
Face of it wrong to kill me. Some people might say, well, yeah, you always existed, but you didn't always have the same rights as a baby as you have now. That's true. When I was a baby, I didn't have a right to drive a car or a right to vote. But some rights are essential to who we are. Like throughout my whole existence, I have a right to not be enslaved, a right to not be tortured. And I would say a right to life. And this was true during my entire existence, even when I was inside my mother's womb. Here's the fourth argument. So this one would be called the future like ours argument. So this one, we're even just leaving behind the notion of persons. And we can look at things a little bit backwards. Instead of talking about who has a right to life or who is a person, we can just ask, well, what makes it wrong to kill anything? Like, why is it wrong to kill some things but not others? And this argument says what makes killing wrong is it's a kind of deprivation. It deprives a thing of a valuable future or a future like ours. Rats don't have a future like ours, so it isn't wrong to kill them. But you and me and Joe and Dustin and...
Okay, I already talked about this. This is the video I was talking about. This guy's got a great, he does a very, very good job of explaining these things. And I've seen this writing on glass with the neon highlighters thing before, but sorry, let me stop scrolling. But this is the guy, criminally underrated. He does a very good job of explaining things. This already talks about the future like ours argument, and I think it's just very, very, very unconvincing and silly. So if you want to take a look at it for yourself, that's where you'll find it.
Infants and nearly every embryo and fetus does have a future like ours. And so if this is what makes killing wrong, then it'd be wrong to kill nearly every human embryo and fetus. Now, some critics will say, well, fetuses don't have a future like ours because they're not psychologically connected to their futures. But if fetuses, they don't have a future like ours because there's a gap between them and their future experiences in the psychological chain, so to speak. The same thing is true for newborn infants. There's a gap in the psychological chain there as well. None of us remembers what it was like being an infant, for example. So there's gaps there as well. And by that same logic, infants wouldn't have a future like ours, even though most people would agree that they do, and that killing them is immoral. And so that would apply to fetuses as well.
Again, I already said my piece on that. That's why I'm not giving any commentary.
All right, here is my last one. This one's called the impairment argument. It's similar to the future like ours argument, but I'm going to offer a slightly different example from how the impairment argument is put forward in the literature. So think of it this way. Imagine that scientists could genetically engineer unconscious human embryos so that they grow up desiring to be enslaved and serving others, and that they don't have interests even in their own lives. They only have an interest in their own life insofar as they can serve other people. Now, normally we'd say slavery is wrong, right? It's wrong to enslave people. But why is it wrong? Well, a lot of philosophers would say what makes slavery wrong is that it frustrates the desires of rational beings that want to be free. But if we change the beings' desires before they ever had any, so they never desired freedom, would it suddenly become okay to enslave them?
To me, this is no different than saying, forget the fanciful Hey, Extra, thanks for being a member. That's really cool of you. Thank you. Forget the fanciful hypothetical. I'm not saying I'm not granting the hypothetical. I'm just saying put it aside because we don't need the fanciful hypothetical. Today, there are people who, um, through in a variety of different ways, manifest urges and desires that are self-destructive. Does that mean that it's morally okay to do that? Like there are people that I don't know how to say this without talking about like weird kinks or whatever, but there are people that like literally want to be abused. We'll just say it in that way in multitudes of different ways. Now this gets really sloppy because where I'm basically going with this is we don't affirm we would call that in many cases mental illness. And what on earth, like, what is the argument that we should be placating towards, validating, whatever, a mental illness that is not beneficial for somebody's existence? That doesn't actually make any sense. And I don't see any distinction between what we know is like that and what Trent is saying hypothetically could be. So that's my unsophisticated response to that, I suppose.
I think most people would say no, and they would consider this kind of an act on a human embryo to be immoral. But then I would ask them, well, why is it immoral? And I think many would say, well, you should not have tampered with the natural development of this human embryo. You took away its right to develop normally, so to speak. You were wrong to frustrate its development in this way from how it should naturally unfold. And more so, this is done in a way that is not to ultimately serve the embryo. It's ultimately to serve other people. Because we might be able to do genetic engineering to help an embryo not have a disease later in life or something like that. But if you say it's wrong to frustrate a being's development so that it only serves other people and not the being itself, in the case of the genetically engineered embryo that becomes a slave, I think all of that would apply to abortion as well, which frustrates the development of the embryo for, in nearly all cases, the interests of other people and not the interests of the embryo or the fetus himself. All right, so in conclusion, I've offered 5 arguments to show abortion is wrong. And I would say that they show it's so wrong, it's as wrong as killing an infant, that it should be as illegal as killing an infant. It's wrong to kill biological human beings, and the unborn certainly are those. The unborn are persons with a right to life. You and I were once embryos, and it's all.
Yeah, it's really weird. At no point did they go over when it would be permissible to intentionally end a life. And I'm not like this is what I talked about at the beginning. I don't really want to rehash it. But I'm not talking about the death penalty or anything like that. I'm not in favor of the death penalty. But I mean, there are a few more people here than there were at the beginning. So I'll just say it again really quickly. But my counter to that is you're going rock climbing. You're tethered to somebody. They slip. Unless you cut the rope, you are going to get pulled off that mountain and die too. I think that it is permissible to cut that rope. So that is an example of intentionally killing another person.
Always wrong to kill us. Abortion deprives a human fetus in our embryo of a future like ours, and abortion unjustly impairs a being's development. And so I think all of those put forward a very strong case to affirm that abortion is morally wrong. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Trent. And we are now on to Dustin's quote-unquote opening statement. Thou art on mute. There we go.
Yeah, just Dustin Cromit. So.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. I'll link that in the description. So okay. I'll link both of their YouTube channels in the description. So yeah, Dustin posts his like lecture videos and they're enjoyable and they're on ethics and things like that. So I highly recommend those. Yes.
Very good. Okay.
I don't remember his opening statement at all. Maybe I never watched it.
So I think Trent accepts, and in fact, he said at the end, he thinks abortion is as wrong as killing an infant. I think he accepts something like a claim here that I've called equivalence, which says intentional abortion is always as wrong as, or at least comparable to, paradigmatic acts of murder, hunting 5-year-olds for sport or infanticide. This wouldn't entail that it's always as culpable or as blameworthy, but in terms of the objective moral status. My position is that nothing anywhere close to this can be right. And that's mostly what I'm going to argue. I will develop some elements of a positive argument of my own. But so 4 questions to ask in addressing this. First of all, when does one of us begin to exist? Second of all, do we possess our moral status essentially or only accidentally? Third, how bad is the fetus's death, and what difference does that make? It turns out a lot of pro-life philosophers say the fetus's death is actually not very bad, and we'll see why. And then finally, what is the impact of what we might call Thompson-style considerations, facts about the rights and interests of the pregnant person, abortion as killing versus letting die, etc. I take it somebody who accepts equivalence is going to say something like, we begin to exist at conception, and I'm going to deny that.
So I would say I have no problem saying that it's a human being at conception. Now, this he gets into, I'm not going to be able to summarize it here because he's a lot smarter than I am, and he's thought about this more than I have. But it's basically the idea that you don't have your mind and you are your mind. When you're a zygote, you lack that. So it's not you. Now, I mean, for practical purposes, I think the legal personhood argument is kind of the only one like politically that you need, but this is really interesting. It made me think of a lot of interesting things that I'll try to remember to share with you.
We possess our moral status essentially, and I'm going to grant that here. It doesn't actually matter how bad the fetus's death is or how bad it is for the fetus, because that does not impact the ethics of killing, and I don't think that could be right. And they're also going to have to say there is no impact from Thompson-style considerations. So the morality of abortion is what it would be if the pregnant person were an inanimate bat holding an embryo. And I don't think that can be correct. So I'm going to give two main arguments here. One is metaphysical, the other is ethical. Each of them has some different parts. So first, I'm going to argue that Trent's answer to one is false. I say that we are our minds, so we don't begin to exist until our minds begin to exist, which happens presumably when we reach the level of neurological development needed for conscious experience, some sort of mental life. And whatever the moral status of abortion before that point is, it couldn't be murder if that view is right, since there wouldn't be someone there to murder. And then I will, in the second part, even if, and this should work even if I'm totally wrong about the first part, these are independent arguments. In the second part, I'm going to argue that equivalence really strongly clashes with a lot of our ordinary moral intuitions, with the upshot that some of the answers, the foregoing answers.
Nothing pushed me to this. I just watched this debate for the hell of it a couple days ago, and particularly the stuff about I think the hypotheticals are really interesting, like cutting the rope you're tethered to, and some stuff about the mind I thought was extremely interesting. I'm sitting here like in anticipation telling you guys what I want to talk about with regard to the mind that I think is really interesting, and I just wanted an opportunity to talk about it. Basically, after a little while here, I'm going to tell you about if we could put somebody's mind in jail and not their body, would that accomplish the same purpose? And I think that it would, and we'll talk about that. And what does that mean with regard to identity?
So those questions have to be wrong. So I say we are minds, we're embodied within organisms, but we're not themselves the organisms. My own view is that minds are immaterial substances, souls, but I'm going to grant that that's false here because Trent doesn't believe that. So on what I think is the best physicalist view, our minds are parts of organisms. They are objects composed of the parts of our brains that are directly responsible for our mental lives. They begin to exist when those parts reach the level of development and integration they need to sustain our mental lives. They cease to exist when they irreversibly lose them. So at some point during pregnancy, we begin to exist when that happens, but not at the very beginning. Trent's view is instead that we are organisms. We happen to possess minds right now, but we used to not have minds, and maybe someday we won't have minds anymore. On this view, human organisms do begin to exist at conception or shortly afterwards. So on animalism, that's when I begin to exist and when we begin to exist. But I say animalism is false, and the significant majority of philosophers reject it, and here are some arguments against it. First argument, roughly, if my mind and my organism part ways, I say I go with my mind, not my organism, so I must be my mind, not my organism. So suppose a case where we take out the part of my brain responsible for my mental life, suppose that that's my cerebrum, which is plausible, doesn't really matter. We transplant that into a new body and leave this body in a persistent vegetative state. I say that here, I would go with my cerebrum, but my organism would not. So this is a description of this from Eric Olson, who is the leading philosophical defender of animalism, okay? Imagine your cerebrum's put into another head. The being who gets it will have, for the most part anyway, your memories, beliefs, other mental contents and capacities. Your first-person perspective will take himself to be you. What about your organism? Will it go along with the cerebrum? No. A detached cerebrum is no more an organism than a detached arm. Or think of the empty-headed thing left behind when the cerebrum is removed. That's an organism. In fact, it may have the lower brain intact, which regulates vital function, so it may well still be alive. It seems to be the same animal.
In my second book, Facts That Aren't True, I write about Mike the Headless Chicken, who I learned about on Ripley's Believe It or Not. So he beheaded the chicken, with the intention of serving it for dinner, but the chicken's brainstem was intact. Your cerebrum is really like it's involved in thinking and integration and a few other things. But your heart rate, your respiration, your digestion, your life support is all in your brainstem. So an organism that doesn't have a cerebrum couldn't learn anything, but it could absolutely exist. And also what I talk about in Facts That Aren't True is Pavlov, who was an absolutely disgusting monster with what he did to dogs. But he did experiments where he took out their cerebrum, and that's what he found. These old dogs literally couldn't learn new tricks. They couldn't do anything at all except just drool and eat and piss and shit and breathe, basically. So you can, well, I don't know. I kind of sort of lost my train of thought, but I'm just saying that to say that you don't need to be able to think to be a living organism. Even organisms like us, where that's what we do, you don't need to do that to be a living organism. So I think that's why what a person is not the same thing as what an animal necessarily is, or, you know, what a Homo sapiens is. I kind of said this earlier, but I feel like maybe a person is a mind plus its body. And then organism, mind, person are three kind of different things.
That laid down on the table. The comatose being into which my cerebrum is going to be implanted, that's also a living human organism. Presumably, we're not going to kill it by doing this operation. So there appear to be two human animals in the transplant story. One loses its cerebrum, the other gets a cerebrum. The surgeons move an animal from one organ to another, but no animal moves from one head to another. So the conviction that you would go along with your transplanted cerebrum is incompatible with your being an animal. So Eric Olson agrees that he and other animalists have to deny that I go with my cerebrum and instead say that I remain as the brain-dead organism. But I say that's false. I go with my mind, so I am the mind. Also, this part's a little bit technical. It doesn't matter so much, but part of the way he tries to error theorize the intuition that I go with my cerebrum is he says, well, psychological continuity is what matters for self-interest. What matters is which being I'm psychologically continuous with. And that would imply that an early fetus, which is not psychologically continuous with its later self, doesn't have an interest in continued life. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying it might be that animalists have to say this to error theorize this intuition. So I note this, even though there are philosophers who defend animalism, oftentimes they defend it by saying things that will not be amenable to most pro-life people. Now, I heard in a podcast say that if your whole brain gets transplanted, your organism goes with your brain because after it develops, it tends to be our indispensable organ because it's what provides bodily unity. Could he say this about the cerebrum transplant? For a while, your organism consists of just your cerebrum, then it just gains a bunch of new parts when the transplant is completed. I say no, he can't say this for 5 reasons. First of all, the lower brain, which regulates vital functions, that's actually what provides bodily unity, but that stays in place here. So even people like my old professor, Peter Van Inwagen, who's an animalist who thinks I do go with my brain if you transplant the whole brain.
I'm pretty sure I didn't listen to his opening statement before.
Agrees that I remain the comatose organism in this case. Second, even if the cerebrum was indispensable to the organism as a whole, it wouldn't follow that the whole organism could consist of nothing.
So this Anglican guy, in an attempt to come up here and morally posture, has committed himself to violating the Hippocratic Oath. So this is so funny. So Anglican is literally not pro-life. Anglican is pro-death, because Anglican's official view is that if you are dying and I can help you, I will not save your life if you have an opinion that I don't like. So Anglican is the opposite of the Good Samaritan. He's in violation of the Hippocratic Oath. Whatever version of healthcare you practice, you should absolutely be removed from it. You've just told on yourself. That's amazing.
But a cerebrum. An engine is indispensable to a functioning car, but a car cannot consist of just a detached engine. Third, trying to appeal to scientific criteria in determining when a biological human being begins to exist. But a detached cerebrum doesn't satisfy the scientific criteria for being an organism, maintaining homeostasis, etc., any more than a detached arm does. It also doesn't satisfy Trent's own definition of an organism that he cites in his book. An organism is a collection of biological parts or organs that function together to sustain the existence of a whole being that possesses the qualities of life. Because it's just one part of one organ. It's not a collection of things that sustain the qualities of life, right? Fourth, this is an issue Eric Olson mentioned. Think about while my cerebrum is being moved. We have 2 living comatose organisms that it's apparently being moved between. If my organism consists of nothing but the cerebrum, we can't give a plausible account of those. The organism on the first table can't be the one that laid down, because by hypothesis, it's being moved right now. So did we create a new organism by removing the cerebrum? On Trent's view, is my old comatose body a separate human being with its own right to life? Is the organism on the second table going to cease to exist when it gets a cerebrum? Is it wrong because we're going to kill it and replace it with me? I'm going to take over its body parts.
Okay, here's the deal. I'm not finding really any room to add any interesting commentary. So I'm going to move on to what they do is, it's not really a cross-examination, but it's kind of a cross-examination. They start discussing Trent's position here. And I'm going to move forward a little bit into that part. Just so this isn't a video of me playing somebody else's video.
I will. So right now it's 9:36. Let me write this down. You guys do a close and then, rear it over to Dustin. So yeah. Okay, take it away, Dustin, with what you want to say with respect to his stuff. And then, yeah.
Yeah, so a big part of my spiel was about personal identity. And I think that if what I say is right, I think it undermines a number of Trent's arguments, actually. I can spell that out if need be. So I think it would be worthwhile to talk about that. So you gave at least two arguments for animalism, Trent. One of them was, if I am a collection of thoughts in a mind, then I don't think. Was that right? But I do think so.
That's one of them, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. But you said that you were arguing against the view that we're minds. The view that we're minds is not the view that we're a collection of thoughts in a mind. Mm-hmm. The mind is the thing that has the thoughts. Okay, so I don't think that makes contact. I mean, there are bundle theorists who think roughly that I am a collection of thoughts, but I don't think that makes contact with my view or the view of most philosophers who reject animalism.
But are you saying that the mind...
I like how Anglicans shut the fuck up after I pointed that out.
Is identical to some kind of physical structure in an animal?
Yeah, that was the view. I mean, again, I'm not really a physicalist, but that was the view I was defending for purposes of the argument.
Yeah, so we're kind of on a similar ground. We identify a particular physical organic structure as a person. I think it's an organism. You think it's a part of an organism that comes into existence. I think it's the organism because it has this innate capacity to do person-like activities, even if...
real quick, I haven't watched this yet, but the guy, John? Why can't I remember his name? Majesty of Reason is the YouTube channel. But the guy who's hosting this debate has this... Oh yeah, I did watch part of this, but he has a guest on to talk about how physicalism is false, or in other words, you are not your brain. Yeah, okay, so I did watch a little bit of this. I don't know. I'll try to go back to it, but I don't know. I just wanted to point that out.
Those it's innate, so even if they don't become immediate till many years later, your view seems to be so the mind is a physical structure in the brain, and our minds begin to exist, I guess, sometime late in pregnancy.
Well, whenever we gain the capacity for a mental life or consciousness. I mean, it's an empirical question when that is. Maybe it's not that late. Maybe it's late first trimester or second trimester sometime or something.
Mm-hmm. I have a few follow-up questions to that. Suppose I got into an accident that destroyed large parts of my brain so that I was reduced back to the level of having a newborn infant's mind. Would you say that I still exist?
Yeah, and newborn infants are conscious.
Okay, so you would say I still exist, even though many important elements of psychological continuity, like my desires, my interests, my preferences, they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's just because of a particular physical structure.
Yeah, it's a physical object that has its essential property possessing a certain capacity, the capacity to sustain a mental life.
The immediate capacity to sustain a mental life.
No. Okay. First of all, do we agree that the "I'm just a collection of thoughts" argument doesn't work against my position?
Yeah, because you've articulated a different one from just pure mentalism. So here's, I guess, what I'm trying to sort through. So is your argument that would you hold to this principle? It is wrong, generally speaking, to directly kill minds.
It's wrong, generally speaking, to kill beings like us, beings with our essential nature, which I take it as the thought behind your initial arguments. The issue is just we have a dispute about what our essential nature is. You say that it's
yeah, so they don't discuss when it would be okay, they spend like literally the whole time talking about like what is it that determines, or I guess determines that an unborn fetus at any stage, or embryo or zygote or whatever, is a human or a rational kind or whatever.
We're a certain type of organism. I say that we're a certain type of mind.
Mm-hmm. So then because there are other non-human animals that have minds that are superior to, say, a newborn infant's mind, but they don't have the same right to life as a newborn infant.
Yeah. So so what explains the difference in moral status between humans and non-human animals, you're asking?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I think, well, maybe there are a couple of things to say. I don't take it as obvious that this gulf in moral status actually exists. I think you're going to say you have an account of it, and I don't. But actually, I think your account doesn't even work. But which is not to say, of course, there are different sorts of treatment between humans and non-humans that are merited in different ways. Jeff Sebo has a paper about this that just came out in Philosophical Studies. It may be that for theological reasons, humans have a certain sort of office. I've talked about this in some of my written work. This difference in intrinsic moral status. I don't think anybody has given a convincing account of how that's supposed to work. But if we think that your account works, I think I can just copy it. I mean, you say we have this special value because we are of a rational kind. I mean, that's something about my mind, really. So I think I can just say, well, okay, I've got the rational kind of mind, and that's what gives me the moral status and sort of mirrors your view.
Well, right, but is it because it's not just the physical structure of, let's say, a newborn infant's brain, because if it remained at that stage permanently, like let's say in the case of an anencephalic infant, it would never go on to develop the other abilities we account as being quote unquote minds like ours. It is that intrinsic capacity to develop into a much larger cerebrum and cortex that you might see in a 9-month-old infant, for example, that is not present in the newborn. So it seems to me that our moral value doesn't come from merely an organ we possess.
So this kind of thing gets brought up quite often when people are trying to take the utilitarian sort of angle on abortion, which is something like and even in legislation, these kinds of even in states that are trying to go hardcore with the legislation, you oftentimes do find these kinds of exceptions. Imminent death of the mother or the child is just obvious. So like in the case of a child, and there are countless just horrendous birth defects that we don't even know. I mean, for like 80 or 90% of birth defects, we don't even know what the cause is. I don't remember the exact statistic on that, but funny enough, I heard it from Neil deGrasse Tyson or whatever. But I think that terminating a pregnancy via abortion, even in like the second trimester, in a case of something where we know for a fact that the fetus or the child, once it's born, can't live, is morally acceptable. Now, they're not exactly going this route. They're trying to determine whether or not that means it's not part of the rational kind that is humans. But just from a different angle, I think that can be approached, and I don't think it's an unreasonable quote unquote solution.
Possessed temporarily in our development, but in the kind of being we are that can continue to develop our organs.
Well, I was agreeing that it comes from the kind of being we are, but I was saying what we are is sort of a part of one organ. But
Chris, this could be easily solved. Just make it a government policy that all newborn males must have vasectomies performed on them, and then when they're ready to start having children, they can reverse the vasectomy. It's an easily reversible solution. Now, are you going to tell us that I don't support the government controlling what happens to men's bodies? Well, then congratulations, you're pro-choice.
I think
but it's like that part of your brain, like it is not the thing that develops you, that continues to grow. It is the large organism itself works upon that part and grows and expands it into the person-like mind that exceeds non-human animals.
Yeah. I agree with that. But I mean, look, so when you say it's not just something about the physical structure as it currently is, it has to be something about it, I don't know, its proper function or its telos, or maybe what that structure could, maybe some modal property, what it could instantiate. I think your view has the same problems, because we have cases of, say, human beings who, or at least there are possible cases of human beings who.
If you don't want unwanted pregnancies, then forced vasectomies. That would guarantee that they don't happen, but you're not going to do it. Okay. They
Don't have the.
They go back, they belabor this first point forever, and then Joe interrupts. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. There's really only kind of one more thing I wanted to talk about.
Need to for each one. And then that will allow us to go through Dustin's case briefly, however one.
Yes, it would be responsible to prevent unwanted pregnancies. So by thinking ahead, if we just do forced vasectomies, then they can't happen. This is a solution to your problem.
By one, so we don't miss stuff.
Yeah. So let's do the first argument. I think it was roughly along the lines of it's wrong to intentionally kill innocent human beings. That's the central premise. Dustin, how would you interact with that?
So it's wrong to intentionally kill biological human beings. What that means is human organisms.
Yeah.
I say I'm happy to grant that it's wrong to intentionally kill, or at least it's usually wrong, rather, intentionally kill beings like us. I say that we're not human organisms, though. There's not.
So that's the premise you would reject.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we would end up in the discussion we had just prior to this as to why you would reject that. But
this is why I say the personal identity. This is why I wanted to talk about.
No, I agree. But I think it's helpful to move through it, because different people, because obviously, right, this isn't a debate, right? This is a discussion where, and I think I want to bring up some interesting points for everyone to chew on. Because like with any argument or any position, people will find different things that are persuasive to them or not persuasive to them. Because there are some people who defend the permissibility of abortion who would actually find all 5 of my arguments persuasive, but they would do a Thompson bodily rights argument instead. So with this particular argument, would you say this argument is something a person, let me start with this. Do you think that it is at least a valid argument?
Is it logically valid, you mean? I assume, I mean, I haven't seen it right now, but I assume it is.
Yeah, sure. So then from there, if someone held the position that it is wrong to directly kill human organisms, then this argument should be persuasive to them. It should be something they should endorse. Would you? I don't know what you would think about that.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, that's great, because I think a lot of people who oppose abortion could actually be brought around to that premise, so they already believe it.
Yeah.
And so I think
that's because they haven't clearly differentiated what we think we are.
Sure. But what I want to do is to always meet people where they're at, like David Boonen does in his book Defense of Abortion. The strongest argument will rely on premises that another person accepts. So for many people, then I think this is an argument that they should take seriously, or may even need to be obliged to take seriously. So
that's the first argument. Maybe we should just go on capacity for rationality, and he gave a kind of inference to the best explanation for why this is the right account of personhood. He basically said it was, for all at least the uncontroversial cases of persons, this is an extensionally adequate account. That is to say, it captures all and only those, at least uncontroversial cases. It rules out ones that we don't want to include, or that we don't think should be included within the category of persons, and it rules in the ones that we think that we should include. And it's unifying, it's illuminating, and so on. So that's the basic, and of course, given that account, it would follow that the fetus, because it's an individual member of a rational kind, would be a person, and so wrong to kill. That's the basic thrust of the argument.
Yeah, and it seems like we kind of are in a lot of agreement on this main point, that it's wrong to kill individual members of a rational kind. It seems like where we disagree is on what particular facts make us a member of a rational kind. That, Dustin, your view seems to be what makes us a member of a rational kind is the possession of a particular physical structure in the brain, I guess, versus my view that it's belonging to a particular kind of organism or species.
I wouldn't frame it that way. I would say we have a disagreement about what we are.
Okay.
Yeah, the metaphysics of
I think that we're an object composed of,
your hypothetical view.
Physicalist. I think that we're an object composed of certain parts of our brain.
Do you believe we belong to a kind?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm happy to say that we belong to a rational kind. We have the rational kinds of minds. There's some sense in which it's fine to say that I'm of the kind human being because I'm embodied in a human organism. It's just that's not an am of numerical identity or something.
Mhm.
And you don't
So-
take that to be essential, right? Because if
Yeah,
you were,
yeah, it's
if
not
you took
essential.
your little cerebrum and put it in, let's
Yeah,
say, a
because my
cyborg,
cerebrum could no longer be embodied in a human organism.
yeah, it could go into a cyborg.
Okay, so I don't know what the particular moment that inspired me for this final thought was, and I don't know when we're gonna run into it, but I am just kind of sitting here not saying very much. But this idea of you are your mind or whatever, it just made me think of something really, really interesting that I wanted to share. So let's imagine imagine somebody commits some sort of crime and they have to go to jail for a period of time. Doesn't matter if it's a week or 10 years. Does anybody think that it would be that it makes any sense? Or sorry, let me just simplify it. Let's say they spend the entirety of their sentence in a coma. Like they intentionally induce a chemically induced coma in themselves, and they spend the whole time in that coma. Do any of us actually think that any justice was served in this case? Right? No, we can't possibly think that, because your body sitting in jail in a coma is basically an absent mind sitting there, and we're not interested in punishing the body. That doesn't actually make any sense, because it would have, whether or not you believe that justice should be about revenge or about or have a restorative aspect of it, in neither case does that actually work or make any sense. And so, like, you can say, like, well, it's a stupid hypothetical because who's going to do that? And it's like, well, okay, like, let's say that they don't purposely put themselves in a chemically induced coma. Let's just say, like, they're going to be on trial for something, but then they go into, they slip into a coma naturally. Something happens. So then would we go forward with the trial, and then would they serve their sentence while they're in that coma? No, what would happen is the whole time that we're like, it would be suspended until they came out of it. Or perhaps if they're in the coma for many, many years, people just forget about it or something. I don't know. But no, like when we talk about you are guilty, you are morally responsible, or whatever, we're talking about the mind. And I think that that's a product of the brain. So we can expand this to be a little bit more ridiculous and say, like, well, okay, if let's say we could download we could put your consciousness onto a hard drive or something like that, put your mind onto a hard drive and just leave your body alone. Would we keep your mind on the hard drive alive and just put that in jail instead? Would that accomplish the same task that taking you with a functional brain and body in jail? Yeah, actually, I think it probably would accomplish the exact same thing. So that's just the weird thought experiment that this whole thing made me go in with respect to trying to reckon, like, when we say you, what do we actually mean? And I think we mean your mind, and I think that the mind and the brain might actually be the same thing. Trent gives a counter to this that I think is actually really good. He talks about a split brain hypothetical. We know that we can remove half your cerebrum and you'll continue functioning basically normally. But what that implies is that we could hypothetically then take half your brain and put it into the body of somebody else without a brain. And then, like, let's pretend we have the technology to actually make that work. Then all of a sudden there would be two of you. So now if one of you commits a crime and I split your brain after the fact, do I have to put both of you in prison? That's really messy. I don't think that necessarily, I feel like you almost have to, but the more important question is, if you are your brain, then are there two of you? Well, those two brains and two bodies would go on and live different lives. So it's sort of like, at that moment, maybe you are, but immediately afterwards you become two different people. but you're going to technically still have the same identity. Like you'll have the same memories and you'll probably have the same kind of thoughts and whatever. But two new people with the same history, yeah, I think it's a really good counter. I haven't thought about it too much, but I think that that's really interesting. And yeah, Trent's position is going to be that what you are is a spirit or a soul. And so he'll just reject all that physicalism, but I don't think that there's anything that you can really use to support that. Now, what's really kind of funny about that too is that exact same identity crisis that I outlined is what happens with organisms that reproduce via binary fission or by budding. So like a sponge does that, a bacteria does that. When one bacteria splits, does that bacteria cease to exist? Or are they both, since they're both clones, and technically they're just two halves of the exact, like it's not a clone like Dolly the sheep. It's a clone that it's literally the exact same organism you started with split in half. Well, if they're both still that same bacteria, then that means every bacteria alive on the planet is still the first bacteria that ever existed. Now that's freaky. Yes, some of you are pointing out parthenogenesis, but the bacteria example is way more extreme because it's literally in whole. The two bacteria are, the sum of them is the original one. Whereas in parthenogenesis, that's not really the same thing. Anyways, the link for the link tree, or sorry, the StreamYard should be pinned here on the chat. So if anybody wants to come up and chit chat for a little while, I thought maybe this would go on for longer, but I kind of started to realize that I wasn't really talking very much. And so I don't think that that's very honest content to spend more than half the time listening to somebody else's video. So if anybody wants to come up, please do. Probably won't be tomorrow. Well, it might be tomorrow, but maybe tomorrow. I haven't decided yet. I want to take a look at this video, 1 doctor versus 20 anti-vax, just for the fun of it. And with that being said, I do have a guest. Omegon, something like that. What's up?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Hey, Peterson. I'm a big fan of yours. I saw that you were kind of taking on some pro-life stuff, pro-choice stuff. Is that right?
Kind of, sort of. I just thought it was interesting. And the more interesting part of it I wanted to talk about was the ideas of mind and identity, which I kind of just ended with a little bit ago.
Gotcha. Well, I've had a few discussions with my wife about this, and I guess I kind of admire you and your work, and I wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things. Like, first of all, I'm very pro-choice, and but I feel like when it comes to pro-choice for any reason, it kind of feels like a tougher position to hold. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
that's not the position. That's not the position I hold. In general, in the first trimester, I don't think there should be any restriction, and
yeah,
I think that's because the fetus doesn't have a capacity to suffer, essentially. Now I said this earlier in the stream. It was way early on, so maybe you weren't here, but I did say something like, and this would be impossible to prove, so I don't think it should ever like become part of the law. But like in principle, if like somebody said, I'm going to intentionally have sex until I get pregnant with the goal of getting an abortion, I think that that's wrong.
yeah,
But I don't see how anybody, except for some like just hardcore brain rotted partisan hack, would also not think that that's wrong. But
yeah. That kind of seems like a provocateur type of thing to do. Kind of just trying to get a reaction out of people. Um, I I think most of the good reasons are, obviously, I consider the woman's life just as valuable. I think there's a lot of crazy sort of radical positions that sort of take this stance that, the baby's life is so important. We gotta, put the baby's life above the mother. And that's that's strange to me. I don't really get that stuff. But then there's, like I said, there's the people that go too far on the left and they kind of say, yeah, all abortions are cool, no matter what. And that's where I kind of have some problems.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of lies, like they support abortion. Well, okay. There's propaganda, and then there's thinly veiled truths that are at the same time propaganda you hear on the right. So they say things like they support abortion all the way up to 9 months, including after birth. So the nugget of truth in that is, like, in the state of New York, this was like 5-10 years ago, I don't remember exactly, they did legalize abortion all the way up to 9 months. And this is a big issue when Hillary and Trump were running against each other. But the reason New York did that was because they were guaranteeing that when the imminent life of the mother is in danger, that an abortion can be performed. Because it's not like, even in New York, you can't go to Planned Parenthood with a dilated cervix before your water's broken and just say, I decided to change my mind. I don't want it. Abort it. You can't do that. Okay. So, but that's what they're trying to sell. So that's the propaganda, with almost the veneer of truth hidden into it. The other thing, and this became relevant during this past election, is the abortions after birth thing, which isn't really true, but I think it actually does expose something that I think probably is wrong. So, and this was big in the vice presidential debate because Walz signed this into law apparently in Minnesota. So if an abortion happens in a very late term pregnancy and the fetus, baby, whatever you want to call it, doesn't die as a result of the abortion, then if the doctor goes total hands off and doesn't attempt to save the life, because normally in a premature birth, you have to do everything you can to sustain the life. The doctors can go hands off and do absolutely nothing and let it expire on the table, and they can't be punished for that. I think that that's a really bad moral gray area that really needs to be thought of more. I haven't put too much thought into it because
in the US?
yes.
Like in every state?
No, it's only in a few states. I don't know how many specifically, but if you perform a failed abortion on a pretty late term fetus and it lives, it's on the table or whatever, like I said, the doctors can go hands off, and it's not a violation of the right to, I can't remember what the heck it is. It's not exactly the Hippocratic Oath, but well, it probably is that. You have an obligation to provide life-saving care to attempt to, like, you have to do that. You can lose your license or go to jail, but they make the exception here. And I feel like that's probably something that might be something that the pro-life side wins in the long run. And I don't think I really have a problem with that.
Yeah, I wasn't even sure how true. I mean, it feels like propaganda when they talk about certain late term abortions, like 8 and 9
Well, when
months, because,
Republicans talk, it sounds like propaganda. That's the problem.
well, yeah, that does seem like a lot. But it sounds, because from what I read, doctors tend to want to not go do an abortion past 24 weeks just for the safety of the mother. That tends to be like the spot where it starts to get dangerous if you go past that point.
Yeah, could be.
But I appreciate getting your perspective, Peterson. I appreciate all that you do. Thanks for talking with me, man.
Oh, you're very welcome.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too. Well, there's nobody else, but like I said, if you want to come up and just chit chat for a little bit, if you had any questions or anything like that. Oh, I forgot to I forgot to say this at the beginning. Oh, I should have said this an hour ago. Let me let's see. Apparently Wi-Fi Gospel wants to debate me. You know, the guy that debated Justin on Modern Day Debate and who I made the video about. He must have seen my video and he is not happy and he wants to debate me. I don't even know what he wants to debate about, but it sounds like the most worthless endeavor possible. So that may or may not happen. I'd honestly rather not, but we'll see. What's even the point? That's what I asked myself. I was like, should I just spanky him to oblivion? I probably will. Spank him out of existence. I saw part of that, and the part that I saw was really bad on the part of Godless Engineer. He just wasn't even like it looked like he was looking for what to say that he had written down previously in a Google Doc for like a solid minute. I was like, well, this is bad. But I don't know. I only watched a little tiny bit of it. Make abortion illegal and take away women's access to birth control. God, I love the USA. Yeah, that's what they're doing. Everything that they're doing is just absolutely... I can't think of anything they're doing that's not atrocious. The people that Trump pardoned lately, just the absolute worst dregs. Didn't do any prep. I mean, that's possible. How much do you have to prep for pre-sups? I mean, if you're experienced with it, you don't have to do any. But if you're not, you might have to. I don't know. $2.22. All right. Well, we'll go till 2:30. I'll sit and answer some questions for a while. Like it says, if you want to come up and chat, go right ahead. Blitz started doing like a call-in show that he puts it on YouTube and TikTok. But he kind of, I think I could do that with this. All right, Gates of Delirium. What's up?
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, first of all, love all the stuff you've been doing with Justin recently. It's really entertaining to watch. You two make a great duo together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, he's just such an encyclopedia.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say one thing about the specifically the Wi-Fi gospel or whatever you want to call.
Yeah.
I'm just hearing the lo-fi gospel thing.
Dial-up gospel. I like that one.
Lo-fi gospel, yeah. The one thing that like I've never understood why people don't point out to like precept arguments and things like that is that we can have these arguments all we want and we can say they're not sound, but like they're valid, right? But like it's not evidence, right? Like, and I think
no, it's not.
People just like focus on that more. It's just be like,
well, they claim that it is. They just say, I know. They say that what they presuppose is what they know, not what they believe in. Yeah. And it's like it all hinges on that. And it's just really stupid.
It's just absolutely wild to me that like people don't hold their feet to the fire on that when they debate them, because it's like, okay, cool. That's a great, valid argument, I guess. But like, just actually, you have to support them with evidence to make it sound right. Yeah. Like it.
I do my best to do this. I don't say it exactly in those terms, but maybe you've seen me do this before. But I'll say to them, what is it that I can do other than affirm this belief if I adopted your worldview? None of them can ever answer that question. The only thing they ever end up saying is, well, you'd be able, unless you adopt my worldview, you can't account for logic and blah, blah. It's like, no. That's your presupposition. What could I do other than that? And none of them can answer that question. Well, I had a thought and then it ran away from me.
All good. That happens. Yeah, no, it's just been interesting seeing I watched the Godless, at least part of the Godless Engineer debate, who I really love his work on the line, but like as a software engineer too, it's like nice to see someone else approach these problems that way. But like, yeah, he did do a very good job of like being a lot more steadfast in the argument, but that's okay. It's fine.
Who were you talking about just there?
Oh, Godless Engineer, his debate.
Oh, yeah. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I'll watch some clips of it. I
watched part of it. But... Yeah, he was way too, I would say, going along with the presup argument. It just doesn't do anything to go along with it. It's like, what's the point of arguing about these completely imaginary things? So,
Oh, I remembered the thing I was going to say earlier. A more simple way you can address them is to say, does this prove anything other than the argument? And it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Yeah. And that's why I invented Spanky, because it's like, okay, what does this prove other than nothing? It proves absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to say, it's like it just seems like people who debate these precepts, they can just state that, hold their feet on it, and like nothing else actually matters. And I don't know why people don't do that more. But
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, keep at it, man.
Thanks.
All right, see
ya. So Milt Franklin, do you think humans will have or will evolve to better suit civilization, or has civilization not been around long enough to warrant a change? Humans will. It's kind of hard to say. What we do is, so like technology and culture and civilization evolves far faster than we do, or our possible ability to keep up. But what's happening, unfortunately, now what's very possibly happening is things like it starts off small, like nearsightedness, but then diabetes and more serious problems are probably going to become more common in humans because of how much we've removed natural selection from ourselves. And so could that possibly cause humanity to, like, civilization to begin to collapse, and it doesn't keep up with the progress in civilization or technology that we've made? Possibly. And now it's like, well, then are you advocating for eugenics? No. The only thing what we should do, the problems that are created for us by science and technology should be alleviated with better science and technology. So if gene therapy can ever become something that's feasible and easy, then that would be sort of the solution, I guess. All right, Ditso, I'm going to let you in here. I wanted to answer that super chat question first. What's up?
Hey, Peterson, pura vida.
I'm good. How are you doing?
Hot as hell over here. Summer already. We're daily, it's about 80, 85, 90 Fahrenheit. So hot as hell. Listen, this is an awesome conversation. I put 2 links on the back chat. I don't know if you're familiar with the case that happened in my country. My country for 12 years had made in vitro fertilization illegal.
Oh, and really?
Yeah, the people who wanted to use that went through the whole internal process, and the courts kept on rejecting, even the Constitutional Court, because here we separated the Supreme Court. So we have the Supreme Court and we have a Constitutional Court. And the Constitutional Court kept on rejecting. And since we have the Treaty of San Jose ratified, that opens the door then for a supra court, which is the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. So my people went there and said, listen, the illegality of in vitro fertilization is contrary to the right of self-determination, the right of health, the right of family, and the creation of family. Basically, a rundown throughout the whole points where it violated the human rights established not only through the United Nations but through the Treaty of San Jose, or the Carta de San Jose, and the Inter-American Court took about 4 or 5 years to go through the whole thing, and this is the final sentence. In very short and concise, to the eyes of the human rights, sure, there is the notion of protection of life from convention, but in the most restrictive way possible, meaning that at the moment of fertilization, that process has no judicial consideration whatsoever. The actual judicial consideration falls on the woman who is experiencing that pregnancy, not on the fetus. And the problem is that your country has never ratified the Treaty of San Jose, because it actually blows up natural law and common law like you have no freaking clue, because it transforms it into a use positive law or a application of a normative law from the inter-American sense. So I'm going to leave you that there. Go ahead and read it. I've got it for you in English. These arguments are, yes, mainly legal in that sense, but they give also a philosophical sense of it. The problem with pro-life is that they are imposing a ad hoc morality and pretending that ad hoc morality has to be codified and applied normatively through the legal system. And that is tyranny in every sense of the word.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I'll see if I can take. So they. Okay. Now, I forgot what I was even gonna say, but thanks.
Hey, that's what I'm here for, man. That's what I do. This is my work, man.
Yeah, I know.
I give elements. So yeah, and if you ever look, I'll send you my email. If ever you get into that abortion debate and you need a lot of base and everything from that sense, hook me up, man. I'll give you so many arguments that the opposition is going to have so many headaches that they don't know if they are supposed to be doing an intracranial hole or completely exit their brain, because it's going to be hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
I've debated this all over my country and in Central America. So.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Pura vida, walk with your eyes open.
I'll try. Oh, that's funny. Hey, look at that. A new member. Thank you. All right, Hobbs.
Hey, buddy.
What's up?
Not much. I do you mind if I ask you 2 questions that aren't pertaining to your topic?
Yeah, but you're down to 1 now.
Oh no. I love Scap Attack. I know you're a basketball guy. I hope you watch Scap Attack on YouTube. He's
okay,
amazing.
I saw you mention that earlier. I have no idea what the hell Scap Attack is.
Scap Attack is I'm a Michael Jordan goatist. I will never be on the LeBron James goat train. And he does lots of good videos on just like why LeBron is not the goat. He debates Gilbert Arenas a lot.
Oh yeah.
So that might be up your alley. I think it's really cool. Sorry, go ahead if you had something to say.
The one thing about the Michael Jordan versus LeBron debate, like if we're going to debate who's the better basketball player versus who is greater in terms of the history of the sport and their career, I think that those are two different things. If we're going with the latter, then I'm still sympathetic toward Michael Jordan. But if we're just going to try to say who was the best basketball player, there's a lot of senses in which this is really stupid and unfair. Because, like, let's imagine, well, what if we just 1v1'd everybody? Okay, Michael Jordan has a 0% chance of ever beating Shaquille O'Neal. Neither does anybody. So, but nobody actually thinks Shaquille O'Neal is the greatest basketball player of all time. What I think the most compelling thing is when Jordan retired, the Bulls nearly went back to the finals. When LeBron left Cleveland, they were the worst team in the league.
That's a good point.
And when he came back to Cleveland, they were still the worst team in the league before he got there. And then they went to the finals. And honestly, if Kyrie and Kevin Love hadn't gotten injured, I really think they would have won. I mean, they won 2 games without Kevin Love. And I don't remember if they won 2 games without Kyrie or if just one of those games was without Kyrie. I don't remember. I really think that they would have won back-to-back if they had both been healthy. And I'm sorry, but I mean, Kyrie Irving is, I mean, at that point in his career, he wasn't on the level that he is now. I guess I wouldn't exactly say, but you know, Kevin Love is not the equivalent of Dennis Rodman or Scottie Pippen, you know? So I think that's the most compelling thing. LeBron James literally turned a group, the worst team in the league, with one addition, Kevin Love, who's great, but not on the level of, he's not a, I don't know if he made the top 75 or not, but yeah, but he's not that. And so, and in the absence of Jordan, that Bulls team. So it's kind of like asking yourself, like, a lot of this is debated in hypotheticals. Would the 96 Bulls have beat the 17-18 Warriors? Fuck no. They absolutely would not have, you know? And yeah, LeBron's finals record is pretty abysmal, but that's one of the reasons. 2011, you can fairly blame it on him. It is a pretty bad blemish. 2015, though, was, again, like, what the hell do you do when your second and third best players get injured? Nobody wins a finals under those circumstances. So,
yeah, absolutely. And then it's a team sport. You're debating eras as well. Yeah, I totally get that. I was going to say, like, I'm a big hockey guy, Canadian here. Currently, it's Alex Ovechkin chasing down Wayne Gretzky's goal record. And I think the same debate could be made. Like, you're debating 2 different eras. But I think even Gretzky himself has admitted if Ovechkin played in this era, he would probably be the best goal scorer of all time.
oh, yeah. Okay. So, you know how LeBron went on Pat McAfee was talking about Giannis in the, if he'd have played in Wilt's era or in the 70s,
Yeah,
he would. So I think that that's a really stupid argument to make because let's imagine it this way. A typical, we know, it's like, thanks to science, you know, and technology and whatever, we know an incredible amount of stuff today. Like, literally, a kid who is in high school and is a really outstanding student, like has a 4.0 GPA, or like if they take AP classes, they can have higher than that. A kid who has a 4.0 GPA in high school today will know more about the world probably than Albert Einstein did.
yeah.
Does anybody think that a 4.0 high school student today is more intelligent than Albert Einstein was?
Yeah.
No. And so this eras thing, it falsely assumes that, oh shit. Hold on a second. I will be right back. Oh man. Okay. I'm back. So
Okay.
short story is I spent 2 hours at the DMV, and when I got done, or when it was my turn, they said, yeah, you don't have the paperwork you need, so get wrecked, nerd. And I called the people I need to get that figured out like 2 hours ago, and they just called me back. I was like, I have to take this because I'm not going through all this shit again. But anyways,
Yeah, heck yeah, man.
the eras debate. So that eras debate is predicated on this false idea. Well, it's just like the send a high schooler back and he would be smarter than Albert Einstein, or she. No, but this eras debate is predicated on an idea like that, which would force you to commit to, if I transferred Jerry West to the modern age, would he be incapable of learning the game of basketball as it is currently played? And that's just stupid. No, I don't think there's any argument for that, because humans we haven't evolved into a new basketball playing species or something like that. And like what people don't realize, I mean, yeah, what people don't realize is the rules were different back then. You couldn't put your hand on the side of the ball when you dribble, for example. There's all kinds of things about the way the game has become a little bit laxed now that allows for players to play the game like in a more complicated way. And, you know, but besides that, like, yes, Giannis is an absolute freak of nature. But if you transferred him back to the past, he wouldn't be able to do a lot of the things that he does in today's game. So he would be restricted.
Yeah.
Now he would still be the most dominant physical force, but that's removing the idea that, you know, if I brought Jerry West into today's day and age, or I don't know who else would be a good comparison would be, but like Magic Johnson, because he was like super skinny, you know. Well, why would he not? And he didn't have, his bag wasn't as deep as, you know, a LeBron James or Kyrie Irving or whatever. It's like, well, if you put the best players in the competition where the competition is elevated, then they elevate their own game. They train more, they go through all the extra steps. And so I think that era's comparison debate is really fallacious and unfair for those basic reasons.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. I mean, I've just gone into basketball in the past, I don't know, 5-6 years. Like, I'm in Canada, so for us it was the Raptors winning the championship that sort of made me an NBA fan. So I've just been getting into the last few years. What I like about basketball is, like, you could almost make that argument, like you could drop someone in a different era because like the equipment hasn't really changed. I do understand like rules with I mean, you go way back in time with the forward pass. But yeah, like the advent of the 3-point shot, all of that. But like with hockey, like it's apples to oranges because the equipment has changed so much, technology has changed so much. I think that's cool with basketball and like track and field, like how much has changed in track and field since ancient Greece, you know?
Yeah, or even since 100 years ago, like Jesse Owens, they ran on cinder tracks, which is like the track was made of burnt charcoal.
Yeah.
Like what the like you can't run fast on shit like that. And he still ran. And they also did yards instead of meters. But no, with modern technology, Jesse Owens could probably run like a 10.1.
Yeah.
And that's incredible.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. I don't know if it's too much to ask. I know you're a big astronomy guy. I've been into planets a little bit lately. Is there any way that you could wrap my head around a black hole? For the life of me, it does not make sense. I've heard like comparisons to like a balloon, the balloon comparison. It makes no sense to me. I just cannot wrap my head around a black hole.
I've never heard of the balloon comparison, but I mean, I can tell you why black holes have the property they have. It's actually fairly simple, but then wrapping your head around anything that's going on in and around them is almost impossible. So I'm going to take this pencil. I'm going to throw it up. It came back down. Okay. Let's say I throw it harder. It'll go higher, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is it conceivable that I could throw that pencil so fast that it never comes down?
On Earth? No.
Yes, actually. It's called escape velocity.
Yeah, there you go. Yes.
So, and on Earth, it's like between 11 and 13
Yeah.
kilometers per second. It's
good point.
absurdly, but you know, what goes up comes down because of gravity. But there's a speed where which you can launch something
Yeah.
where it doesn't come back down. That's called escape velocity. Now, escape velocity depends on the mass and the radius of the object. So, funny enough, Jupiter is over 300 times the mass of Earth. But if you went to Jupiter, we're ignoring that it's a gas planet for now. If you went to Jupiter and stood there, you wouldn't weigh 300 times what you weigh here on Earth. You would only weigh 2.5 times what you weigh here on Earth. And that's because Jupiter's radius is huge. So gravity weakens exponentially with distance. So while, yes, Jupiter is so much bigger than us, its radius is so much bigger. So the gravitational strength on Jupiter isn't like linearly proportional with its mass, whatever. So mass and radius, those are the key things. What a black hole is you take a star and it's just the core of the star that collapses. It's not the entire star. It's just the core. Well, the core gets crushed so small that what happens is that escape velocity, because remember, the strength of gravity is going to increase as radius gets smaller. So the mass stays the same, but it gets so small that the escape velocity exceeds the speed of light.
Wow. Okay.
That's why they're black holes.
Okay.
And that's why you can't see anything in them and no information comes out or whatever, although we kind of know that information can leave them now. But what's cool about that is the black hole, its gravity extends beyond it. Because, you know, if I hold something in the air and drop it, it still falls because Earth's gravitational field extends beyond the radius of Earth. So the black hole part of it, I think it's called the Schwarzschild radius. The part of it where you can't see anything, that's bigger than the physical core that collapsed inside there. It's just it extends out to the point where the gravity is still stronger. The escape velocity, whatever, with the gravity, whatever, is still greater than the speed of light. If you want to hear something that probably makes sense and you probably get that, but here's something you're not going to get. The largest black hole that we know of, called Ton 618, it has a mass 66 billion times that of the sun. But what that means is its Schwarzschild radius is like literally about the size, like it's many times bigger than Pluto's orbit.
Wow.
I'll show you. I don't know if you can see this or not.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
So people think that our solar system ends at Pluto. It doesn't. Our solar system's actually many times bigger than that. But yeah, that's Neptune's orbit. This is the Schwarzschild radius of the largest black hole that we know about. It's 4 light days across. Whoa. So there you go. So, you know, black holes are actually, it's kind of easy to understand why they have that property, but actually comprehending what the hell's going on, that's a different story.
Yes, yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah, man, I was going through those crash course videos. I know you mentioned it on, I don't know, one of the lives that I watched, because I was just wondering about certain stuff like what is the Oort cloud? Where is the Oort cloud? Yeah, those crash course videos, those are awesome. Yeah,
they're pretty good. I used to have a bunch of videos on that. I privatized them on my channel. Well, I kind of got rid of them, and then I tried to sell them on this other website, but I don't know. One day I want to like remaster them and redo them, so all that stuff will be on there. I really thought that my astronomy videos were actually extremely good, but
yeah, no, I think you're a great teacher, man. I think astronomy is like insanely fascinating. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around a lot of things, but I'm sure that's the case with a lot of people, even experts in the field.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're awesome, man. I came across your channel, I don't know, a couple months ago. You and Justin, I would say you and him are 80% of my viewing now. Love what you guys do. It's awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Justin's very good at what he does.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool, man. Hope you take care.
You too.
Bye, buddy.
Later. The Schwarzenegger radius. That's funny. Okay, well, I'm going to head out of here. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but ew, what? Why did somebody write that? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Anyways, it was fun. Who's your favorite genius? I am. All right. Later.